On April 26, 2006, Yowza.com was the first to break the story on the South Pole Telescope in terms of Planet X. The SPT, as it is commonly referred to as, is a 10-meter diameter telescope located at the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica. Simply put, it is the ideal infrared telescope for observing anything rising up from the southern skies, like the Planet X system and its brown dwarf. The official reasons given for constructing this telescope in the most inhospitable region of the world sound noble, but in fact do not justify the expense. The Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station is only accessible by way of specially modified C-130 aircraft. Consequently, flying in the telescope and its support building was a Herculean effort. This is why the same exact science could have been done for a fraction of the cost elsewhere in the southern hemisphere. So why not save the money with a better location? Well, as we pointed out in our article, this was the ideal place to observe the southern approach of the Planet X system at that time. Then came the news we hoped for in 2008. A whistleblower posted Planet X images taken with the SPT on YouTube under the name Nibiru Shock 2012. Here you see the images he posted in his video that were captured by the SPT in January 2008. What is clearly obvious here is that we are looking at a mini constellation and not a single object. So let's take an enhanced look at these images. What we see is the strong infrared signature of a brown dwarf star, and between 5 to 7 planets in orbit around it, depending on how you define a planet. In this close-up provided by Nibiru Shock 2012, he also points out that the brown dwarf has a tail. This can be attributed to the fact that Nemesis, the brown dwarf seen here in the center of the image, is surrounded by a massive dust disk. Ergo, if we could actually see this brown dwarf in space, it would likely look something similar to this animation. The problem this presents for us here on Earth is that at some point in the future we will pass through this dust disk, if we're not already doing so. In addition to the January 2008 images provided by Nibiru Shock 2012, a second whistleblower came forward in May of that year with another SPT image. This second whistleblower named his SPT source in the video, and the government removed it within hours after it was up. With this in mind, we have redacted that information so that for the first time you can see what his source provided him. And this brings us to the final step in our pole shift chronology. On February 11, 2013, we published our YouTube video titled Object of Interest as Seen from the Turrialba Volcano. Using surveillance camera images captured from the Turrialba volcano, we began ongoing observations of an object I initially dubbed Blue Bonnet on January 7th of that year. The site for this surveillance camera is on the 10th parallel and at an altitude of approximately 11,000 feet with a clear view to the southwest. Our analysis also shows that this object entered the constellation Ophiuchus on December 1, 2012 and was well inside that constellation as of December 21, 2012. This means that the prophecy of Nostradamus for this object was in fact fulfilled exactly as predicted. Bluebonnet, as we first called it, is near the Sun, and so with all objects near to the Sun, it can only be observed before sunrise or before sunset. Also note, we eliminated all of the expected explanations for this object, such as it being the planet Venus, which it is not. In fact, this is not a cataloged object, and it has been observed from this location with not one, but with 3 uniquely different camera systems since early 2010. Having captured literally hundreds of images of this object ourselves, we began to wonder if Bluebonnet, as we called it, was actually Nibiru, the outermost orbital of the Planet X system. Well, we got an answer. On July 12, 2013, a video titled "A Cyclical Storm Brews" was posted by the 00 Skyview team. This highly capable group of amateur astronomers confirmed our suspicion that we had in fact been observing Nibiru all this time. In their video, they state, "We have researched the object and here are our findings." Here you see our object, Bluebonnet, which we now know to be Nibiru, and which has been observed since early 2010 from surveillance cameras at the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica. Likewise, the 00 Skyview team also confirms that we first observed it in the constellation Ophiuchus. According to their findings, Nibiru, or Bluebonnet if you will, is the outermost orbital of the Planet X system. Please keep in mind that the celestial mechanics of what is going to happen in our near future are so complex that it's really impossible to say with any certainty exactly what is going to happen and when. But what we can do is give you an idea of the factors that are involved. We call them the Planet X system attributes, such as size, speed, and mass, and we're going to be talking about those. But first, I just want to take a brief moment to talk about, well, a different kind of attribute. It's the sixth plague from the 10 plagues of Exodus. And we're talking about the boils. Now, this is going to be caused by volcanic ash, and this ash will fall on unexposed skin, and if it's not washed off, will cause very painful boils. And so if there's anything that you're going to remember from this program, I want you to remember this one thing. When you get the ash on your body, wash it off. If you don't have water, use fresh dirt or clay, but wash it off. Before computers, we'd have to spend all day at the library hoping to get at least part of an answer to a burning question. But today, all it takes is a few keystrokes, and the next thing we know, the question is delivered to an electronic ether, and from there, back pops an answer. But once we have precise questions about when a certain thing will happen with regard to the Planet X system, what we get back is a rat's nest of orbital irregularities that cannot be reconciled. Why is this? In 1962, a Japanese astronomer by the name of Yoshide Kozai explained why it is so difficult to get a precise answer to a simple question. It is called the Kozai mechanism, and it describes the complexities of how the orbits of objects affect each other in space. It also tells us that the more objects you have, the more complex the solution becomes. And in the case of a Planet X system flyby, there is simply not enough computing power on the surface of the Earth to give a precise answer to a simple question. But beneath the surface of the Earth, such power may exist. It was recently announced that IBM has developed what are called fluidic computers, and they mimic the brain's design with liquid-based transistors suspended in an ionic liquid that acts much like the neurons in our brains. While we're only hearing about the civilian applications today, for the last decade our government has been using several of these fluidic computers in underground facilities, and their computing power is simply awesome. To understand the power of just one fluidic computer, let's begin with a supercomputer such as those used by governments and universities today. Keeping this supercomputer in mind, imagine that you could multiply its numbers by 100 times to create a computing cloud of 100 supercomputers, all working together to process the same data. Then multiply that cloud of 100 supercomputers 100 times, and what you'll have is the computational power of just one fluidic computer. Is that enough computing power to unsnarl a rat's nest of Kozai mechanism orbital solutions? Only our government has the answer to that question, and as we know, they do not share well with others. Nonetheless, we humans have amazing computational skills because we have the ability to tap into cosmic consciousness, a powerful source that dwarfs anything possible, even with fluidic computers. Two such men who have tapped into the power of this cosmic consciousness are astronomer Carlos Ferrada and Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. Like Edgar Cayce, Ferrada had a special gift. He could enter into trance when he was researching, and while in this state, he could write and draw the cosmic knowledge he received. It is how he developed his theory of geodynamics, which is based on the attractions of heavenly bodies, large explosions in the sun, and the cycles of geophysical disturbances. It is also why, when I see Ferrada's deep sadness, that it cuts me like a knife, because I know he has seen with cosmic clarity the coming flyby of Hercules and the Black Star, and it is not a wondrous thing to behold. Rather, it is horrifying. And with that, let's begin a simple overview of what we call the Planet X system attributes, beginning with speed.